news with MMA Payout. It's once again, we're doing the interview, and this time we are talking to boxing aficionado Lukie Ketelle from Inside the Ropes Boxing. Lukie, how you doing?
Right on, man. I appreciate it. It's an honor, privilege, and all that stuff. Love
Oh,
being on the show.
awesome. So the reason why I have you on this week, especially, is the big fight. No, not UFC 268. It's Canelo Alvarez versus um Caleb Plant. I forgot. I was about to say Jordan Plant. Yeah. Canelo Alvarez versus Caleb Plant going down Las Vegas, MGM Grand, Saturday night. Lukie, how you doing? And how uh jacked up are boxing fans for this particular fight?
I think this is a fight that, like, right now, maybe the average boxing fan, let me get my sponsor in the
Yeah,
shirt.
sure.
Uh, the average boxing fan might not be super thrilled about, but as fight week gets going, Caleb Plant is a entertainer. He's going to sell the fight. He's an entertaining personality, and he's coming to win. Canelo feels largely disrespected by Plant. He thinks Plant's very arrogant. They had a press conference where there was a physical altercation. Plant slapped him. Canelo landed a punch. The sunglass went into Plant's eye area, create a little scratch.
Mhm.
As the fight gets closer, more and more people are going to talk, because this is the classic case, and this with a lot of fighting stuff. When you put two people who don't like each other in the same room, good things happen for fight fans because you want to see that conflict. So as long as we keep seeing them in similar places, media keeps filming them not liking each other, the buildup will be fantastic for this fight.
Now, obviously, there was a business component to this. It was hard for the two sides to come together. Just reading on the internet and boxing Twitter, it looked like that this fight was supposed to happen in September, and then it got pushed because of one reason or another. Obviously, both sides pointed the finger at each other, and then you had that altercation. Was it a little bit because of the finances behind that, or was it just because Caleb Plant is a little different as far as how he's promoting this fight?
Well, I think that Caleb, the financial situation, that's just business. You know, if anyone's ever been in business when you're dealing with large sums of money, it never is a quick process. Like if I was like, Jason, I love what you're doing. I want to sign you for, and we'll throw out a really big number. Normally, you'd probably say, well, I want a little bit more, because you want to try to negotiate and
Sure.
get the maximum amount because you see you're a sought after commodity. Caleb Plant has one of the world titles. Canelo wants to be a unified world champion. Naturally, when you have something someone else wants and they're the biggest star in the sport, there's going to be a give and take around a lot of money, because you know whether you win or lose, you're going to monetize this commodity, your asset that you have, that you earn, profit margin. I say all that to say, I think that had nothing to do with animosity leading into press conference. Caleb Plant is a white guy from a predominantly in basically like a trailer park type setting.
Mhm.
There's videos of him fighting people with knives, growing up, getting in street fights. A guy has a knife and Caleb's hitting the guy with a jab. He is an ultra competitive kid who no one ever believed that he should behave the way he behaves. And two, people don't like how confident he is. And he has this confidence coming from sheer abject poverty. So I think that Canelo felt largely disrespected by Caleb because Caleb carries himself in the same manner as a Canelo Alvarez. And Canelo feels someone that hasn't accomplished what he has accomplished should not carry themselves in that manner. And I think that that is what bothers Canelo Alvarez.
Now, I will. There have been theories about that stare down. There was no other people next to them. Do you think that it was uh, pretty much a match thrown on a fire? I'm not match. You know, you get the thing that they wanted that to happen, an altercation to happen, pushing. Maybe not punches thrown, but like at least a pushing, shoving sort of incident. Since there was no one around, no handlers, no media, nothing like that.
I mean, maybe, I don't know, like obviously I've never been in those type of meetings where we're marketing a pay-per-view fight. They have great minds that are writing these stories, great minds putting it together. But I think also part of it is like if I was running this, and obviously I'm not running it, you just want to put these guys together because they don't like each other. And pay-per-views work the best when you have two guys that are like, I don't like that guy, because there's a part of us that goes, okay, the stakes are on the line. Someone's pride's going to get hurt. We want to tune in again and again and see that. That being said, I think this kind of happened unexpectedly. I think that there was a war of words. If you remember at the press conference, there was an expletive where Canelo said mofo, or
Hmm.
Caleb Plant said
Caleb,
mofo,
yeah,
and
he took it.
Canelo took it as a direct insult to a mother. There's been other cited references like Keith Eidick uh, pointed out in which Canelo's used that same word. So I don't know how much of that was truthful. Like I never wanted, but like if we're coming from a fact-based thing, we could examine facts and kind of dissect that. That's for other people to psychoanalytic.
Mhm.
I don't think people expected this to escalate as much as it did. I think people thought they might kind of skirmish or push each other, but the fact that they had such a physical confrontation, I mean, in terms of the last 10 years, has there been a more contentious face off in MMA or boxing? Maybe, but I can't think of one at this level. So I don't really think people expected this. I think they expected just kind of like an intense trash talking stare down.
Now, tell us a little bit about Caleb Plant. And obviously, Vegas odds do not have him as a favorite. They actually have Canelo as a big favorite here going into fight week. But tell us about a little bit about Caleb Plant for people that are casuals. He is a great boxer, but does he have enough to give a run at Canelo Alvarez?
I think he does. And I might be biased. I've been in camps with Caleb Plant. I've been around him when he was training to win the world title against Jose Uzcategui, who recently tested positive for a banned substance and lost his fight with the great David Benavidez, who's now fighting Chiron Shut It Down Davis, which is another conversation for another day. Plant is one of these guys. The thing that people are underestimating the most is he's a mental giant. So a lot of times people get into a pay-per-view level fight or get into a situation and the situation takes over them. I think a prime example might be a fighter like Erislandy Lara. Erislandy Lara has all the skills in the world, but to separate himself against Canelo Alvarez in that moment, he kept the fight close enough. And I think the problem with Lara in that fight, beyond not being active, was the stage was far bigger than any other stage he had been on up until that point. Caleb Plant has headlined a few Fox cards. He's been a major focus of the Fox telecast, even though this fight won't be on Fox. And beyond that, I think he has always believed he was a pay-per-view superstar level fighter. So that is one thing where he's going to embrace the moment and he's going to come to win. And when you look at these level of fights with guys that the public doesn't know, you want to see someone who's willing to embrace this, who's willing to rest, who's not going to rush the process and come to win. Now, his biggest win is against Jose Uzcategui. A lot of people might stick their nose at that win because Uzcategui didn't really get a win after that. That's a very big physical fighter. Caleb Plant's biggest attribute in this fight is he has a really, really good feet. He's always in shape. He's very strong. He spars very big people. He's got a good active jab. I think that the key thing for Caleb Plant, if you're studying this, is punches like the lead what is that? A lead left uppercut or the lead uppercut, which is going to come underneath the guard. I think that his lead hand is going to be vital in his success. It really, to me, comes down when I look at Caleb Plant, because I think Caleb Plant's going to win about the first 4 or 5 rounds to this fight. It's about rounds 6 through 9 is where Caleb has struggled in some fights. He needs to get his second wind, and that's not unlike Canelo Alvarez when Canelo Alvarez was at the same point in his career as Caleb Plant.
Mhm.
So for me, the fight will be won or lost in rounds 6 through 9. I think it's very competitive, and I think that people are underestimating Caleb Plant because he's kind of one of these American fighters that I think a lot of people look at has had an easier path, where if he was coming from the UK or some other region, I think people would view him as a very serviceable opponent, because I think Caleb is better than Billy Joe Saunders. He's better than the Smith brothers, but I think people just have a view that his competition level isn't of that. Sorry for talking so much.
No, that's okay. That's great. I like sitting back and listening to this analysis. So you believe that this will be an entertaining fight, an interesting fight. To be honest with you, to be honest with you, Canelo has not had a entertaining fight perhaps since the first Triple G fight in my memory. I don't know if you could jog my memory with his fights. So, I mean, as far as Canelo goes, do you think that Canelo needs somebody, a foil like Caleb Plant, for him to, I don't know, bolster his boxing profile more than it already is?
Well, before we get into this conversation, let's define what an entertaining fight is. Like, what are we talking about? Like an action fight, or are we talking about like inner theatrics? I want to get your definition of that, and then I'll answer.
I would say where it's a fight that is competitive, where you believe that the fight can go either way. So it's back and forth. When you basically, when I think of an entertaining competitive fight, we're going into the last 2 or 3 rounds where it's up in the air.
Okay, because I think Canelo's had a couple of those in recent memory. Like I look at like a Sergey Kovalev. Like, to me, the fight that really stands out that could be a good one if Caleb has a lot of success, and I think the fight that they're probably looking at a lot is one against Sergey Kovalev. Kovalev was winning most of the rounds against Canelo, and he was winning it with just a jab, moving around. It's just that version of Kovalev isn't the Crusher Kovalev we got to know when he first came to America on main events brought up on NBC with Kathy Duva and them. So Canelo, and then you look at Billy Joe Saunders. I don't think Billy Joe Saunders is in the gym year around and is committed to the sport as Caleb Plant, and he was having success early against Canelo. So Caleb Plant's greatest asset coming into this fight, there's twofold on top of skills. He's mentally coming to win, and he's always in the gym. He lives and dies by the gym. He's always committed year around. And I think people underestimate when a fighter is this committed to the sport, good things can happen. I think that what's going to make this fight entertaining is both guys aren't going to like each other, and both guys are going to learn to respect each other in the ring. And if this fight plays out the way I see it, we could be looking at a rematch after this fight, and we could be looking at Caleb Plant going to the next level because he puts on a performance because you got to remember, Caleb Plant is being largely disrespected by most people, and he's a fantastic fighter. If he fights above the way people see him, he becomes a capital G guy in this division because people are expecting him to put up no resistance whatsoever. So I'm expecting Caleb to go to the next level and to Canelo to have respect for Caleb after this fight.
So now that's a great answer, because it goes to the next question as to what are your thoughts about the ending of this fight? Do you see it as, now, is this a Rocky 1 scenario where it's a great fight, but in the end Canelo wins, or do you actually see a big upset?
So I see a bunch of different outcomes, and I'm doing the thing where I'm like covering my bases like a good gambler would. Like, I'm not going to give you one prediction, so anyone can. That's fine. Anyone can be like, "Oh my God, this guy's so stupid. He's the boxing expert. He was totally off." I could see, I could see it being a draw. I could see if it's a close fight. I could see a draw scorecard, kind of like the first Golovkin, because the path for the draw or Caleb to win would be he wins 4 out of the first 5 rounds. And then he wins rounds like 11 and 12 and maybe a 10. Now, if Canelo were to get a stoppage, I don't think there's going to be a stoppage in this fight, because I think a fighter like Caleb Plant, worst case scenario, he's too mentally strong to get stopped. He's not. There's a level of like, you have to give in these type of fights, and I don't see Caleb giving in. So I think it's going to go 12 no matter what. I don't see Canelo getting stopped. I don't think Canelo is the type of fighter until his body's too old that would get stopped. It's a mentality thing with these main event fighters. If there were a stoppage or if there was a knockdown, I see it in between rounds 6 to 10, because that's when Caleb's going to slow down a little bit. And Canelo, the big thing about this version of Canelo is after he fought the second Gennady Golovkin Triple G fight, he kind of turned into Triple G. So people always talk about once he fought Floyd Mayweather, he replicated Floyd's style. Well, it's really when he had hard fights with people, he kind of becomes that fighter. After the second Gennady Golovkin fight, he's really become a pressure fighter who mimics what Golovkin did well, and he's loading up on punches, and people don't want to exchange with him nearly as much. And I think that the big thing that you're going to see in this fight, and a thing to look at on the success rate for Caleb Plant, would be, is he willing to exchange with Canelo when Canelo is loading up on these big punches, when his feet get a little tired, because you're not going to probably be in shape to move around for 12 rounds. I know I keep talking, but I'm going to give you one more thing that I picked up was the great Andre Ward, legend. If you watch that series, he gave a little bit of insight to what they're kind of working on, or what I see. He said, when you're shadow boxing, always move your feet, get your conditioning while you're shadow boxing. So it's not just about the technique. Get comfortable moving. So I think a big thing for Caleb is going to be the movement, but at times against generational great fighters, possibly the best Mexican fighter ever in Canelo Alvarez, you're going to have to pick your spots to sit with him. And when you sit with him, he lands punches. So how do you slow down his punch output? Because he's one of the best fighters at throwing power punches in sequence and landing them effectively currently. And that is what I'm curious about. And I think that question, however that question is answered, will sum up the winner. Because if Plant's able to get Canelo's respect when he's doing that, Plant wins. If Canelo overtakes Plant with effective power, then Plant's going to have to regain late and figure out a way to get back to what was working.
No, that's an excellent analysis of the fight. And I honestly don't know. I have watched Caleb Plant. I know, like you said, he's been featured really well by Fox and promoted really well by Fox. And I just from the business perspective, you said you've been in camps with Caleb Plant. How is the marketing of him as a boxer? Who's his management? If you know, like, how is he as a boxer going to be if he were to come out, say, with an upset win?
I mean, I think the thing I like about Caleb is, I believe Ludacubus is who's running the show for Caleb Plant. I know that one of the great PR minds, Mario Serrano, is involved with him. I'm not sure every single person, but I know the thing with Caleb is it starts with his father, Richie Plant. He built and raised a solid young person, and his father's always around. And when you have a strong voice that you were raised by, even though there's adversity in Caleb's life, maybe he's made mistakes or whatever, we all have, the fact that he keeps his father in the camps. Justin Gamer's a really good coach. People disrespect Justin's knowledge. Justin's very calm in the corner. Justin's a former fighter. He's got that experience. So when things are going wrong, he can think back and go, okay, I've been in that spot where this is what's going on. And Justin's an encyclopedia for boxing knowledge. So he can look at other fighters from the past that were effective with certain styles, and in his head come up with ideas. That being said, they're going against Eddie Reynoso, who's like kind of like a modern day Eddie Futch, where it's like you're dealing with one of these guys that's being touted as a guy that they're going to write books about how great he was as a boxing coach. And you're going against who I think will be inevitably be the greatest Mexican boxer ever, Canelo Alvarez. So that's all fine and good, but you're going up against greatness. I think that and I didn't even answer the question yet, but the marketing is with Caleb has always been, just get this guy in the gym and he's going to train for 2 to 3 hours. And he's really friggin' intense. He loves his Dawn Trip music. He plays pretty much a Dawn Trip, every Dawn Trip album you've ever heard. You're going to hear Dawn Trip. Like I've heard every Dawn Trip song because I was in a camp with Caleb. So he loves his Dawn Trip. And he's a cool guy, but once he gets started working, he's not there to talk. And it's just like a Caleb Plant camp is. It's 2 to 3 hours of hard work. No one talks. He wants to be intense. And then when he spars, he's a dog. He talks to the people he's sparring. He spars heavyweights and will tell a heavyweight, you're the big guy and I'm moving you around. It's about him just being tough. It's he pushes himself to points where I believe he's taking himself to places he thinks his opponent's trying to take him. So he's comfortable being in those uncomfortable situations. That's what it is. And I think the marketing behind him and why some fans haven't maybe gotten behind him as much is it hasn't been as much about talking. He's a colorful personality, but it's more about I'm in the gym. And he's a deep thinker. So he kind of comes up with speeches that almost seem rehearsed, but it's because the moments mean so much when the video camera's on him. And so I think it's about him being intense, serious about working. And then he comes up with these monologues that are kind of how he's feeling. And his wife is Jordan Plant, who's a TV personality. So it's probably in the family. They probably talk through what are you going to say on TV. And I think that the marketing is this is an intense American fighter who really, really believes he's one of the best fighters. He's a white guy in a era where white guys aren't typically good boxers. And that's kind of Caleb, it's like, to me, Caleb, this is a weird comparison, but Caleb reminds me of Timothy Bradley, and it's not in how he fights, but in how they are as people. Tim Bradley, I talked with him and I love Tim Bradley. Tim Bradley's one of my probably favorite boxing people. I don't even know if Tim Bradley knows me. Shout out if Tim's watching this. But when I met Tim, he kind of reminded me of like something I relate to, something where I relate. I'm like the ultimate outsider. I don't really always have friends, and I'm always going to be on the outside. If there's a group of people, I'm probably going to be pushed to the outside. And it's why boxing works for me, because boxing's confrontation. It's built for the outsiders. I'm not supposed to fit in. When I met with Tim one time, it's like, wow, Tim doesn't really fit in with people. And that's what made him a great fighter. And Caleb, it's like, I think some of the pushback is Caleb doesn't fit in with most social circles. Caleb's uniquely him. He's an outsider. He's the quote unquote misfit. Society wants him to be ashamed of who he is, but he's proud of who he is. And boxing gave him the self-confidence to be uniquely who he was put on this earth to be. And I think it's hard to market someone who's unapologetic in who they are when society's saying, no, we want you to look or behave a certain way. And I think that's part of the marketing is that Caleb is who he is.
Showtime 365 All Access, they did a really great job in both episodes I've seen so far of highlighting his relationship with his father and talking about how they just grew up with nothing and started out boxing at a very early age, and that seems, I mean, I don't know, it seems like putting your kid in boxing at like 5 years old seems anti what we are about right now, just because it's a really grotesque sport. It's really a hard sport to get into at that age. But yes, you are correct that the father son dynamic is great, and I definitely think that it could propel maybe the first American boxer in a while. I mean, I can't think of a mainstream American boxer that people would know about in this generation anyway. I don't know, Mayweather.
Kelly Pavlik.
Kelly Pavlik, most definitely. But Pavlik was years and years ago, I think. So anyway, let's talk a little bit about the business, since we do a little bit about business here on my site. Okay, how do you think that? I know you may not be a pay-per-view number guy, but boxing has had several pay-per-views this fall. They have a couple more coming up. Maybe more interesting fights. You tell me. But first of all, let's ask this: how will Canelo and Caleb do on pay-per-view, and is it going to be, this is a different question, the second question is a different question, is it going to be the best pay-per-view that we'll have this fall?
Hey, what do you mean, in terms of a number or in terms of
number? Yeah, Canelo does a million buys whenever he's on. So, I mean, will we just hit that 1 million mark? Will it be lower for some reason because we're opposite UFC? How will it do?
I'm thinking, my gut feeling this is my gut feeling, and I'm not a numbers guy, but my gut feeling, if I ran business, would be this is between 500 to 600 in
Really?
buys. But if it goes above that, that would be a win in my mind, because you got to
Mm,
remember Caleb's a known good fighter,
mhm.
but most of the people are coming to the dance for Canelo. So this is a strictly an assessment tool of how much leverage does Canelo Alvarez bring to the party. So I'm thinking 500 to 600 because we're coming off. This will be what, the fourth pay-per-view of boxing. It'll be the second one. We had Fury Wilder.
Sure.
I just don't see these huge numbers because people are going to be picking and choosing, and we're dividing boxing fans' budgets with so many different fights that they have to buy.
Yeah, we got Bud Crawford coming up. We got Errol Spence coming up. We have Gervonta Davis's pay-per-view coming up. Those guys made solid pay-per-view buys their last fight. I mean, Gervonta Davis actually was surprising, but I don't know if I think Canelo, is a big draw. I mean, honestly, just from a casual boxer viewpoint, and he is kind of falls into that Pacquiao type category where you just need the name. You don't even need to know who the opponent is for someone to buy the pay-per-view. But I mean, obviously fight week, if we see more explosive highlights of pull aparts and things like that, maybe the number goes up.
How much have you seen in terms of like ads built around your content that you're looking at and stuff? Because the thing for me is, if there's conflict and it's viral and people see it along with a big ad push, we could get to that 7, 8, 9, even million buys. But right now, with how little I'm seeing it, and half of my Google SEO search stuff is boxing, that's the number I'm coming with.
We don't see too much, but I'm more MMA focused. I can anecdotally tell you, usually for UFC pay-per-views, where the main event has a real intense rivalry, it'll do well. It'll do well. The searches will go up, things like that. Opposite. This is kind of leads into my next question. Opposite Canelo, Caleb Plant, we got UFC 268, where we have Colby Covington takes on Kamaru Usman in a fierce rematch. Covington, obviously, you probably know, is the MAGA guy. Kamaru Usman is the welterweight champ. So that will be interesting. This leads into my next question. Last time we had a UFC pay-per-view, and actually it was in New York. This is the UFC pay-per-view this Saturday is in New York. They had Canelo and Kovalev wait until the UFC main event was over. That main event was Jorge Masvidal and Nate Diaz. Do you foresee the promoters this time around making Canelo and Caleb wait until the end of the UFC pay-per-view?
I sure hope not. And I don't like it when these big events, like I try to follow MMA. It's not my passion, but
Sure.
like I try to follow it because it's relevant, right? These MMA fighters are coming into boxing, and if I know nothing and my stance is, oh man, I know nothing, well, that's called ignorance. You got to, at some point, you got to be somewhat informed. I know about Covington and Usman or Kumaro,
Kamaru Usman.
and
Yeah.
I just hate when we have a fighter like Canelo in boxing, which is a largely irrelevant sport. And this is the type of fighter that brings a UFC fan in to see his performance, to meet a Caleb Plant, to meet a Marcos Hernandez, who's a great kid from Fresno, California, who's fighting Anthony Durrell. And that could get someone to say, you know what, maybe the main event, that was whatever, but I like this one kid. And when you have a real awesome UFC card that might have better value in terms of fights, it sucks for everybody because it doesn't grow the sport, it divides the sport. I hope the boxing event doesn't cater to the UFC because it just makes our sport look even goofier. We already have enough issues. We already have enough to be laughed at. Why don't, like, do we ever see the NBA saying, "Oh man, the NFL game went to overtime. We got to do a double halftime because our product can't compete with what's going on in the NFL. It's too interesting. Too many people care about that." It makes us look largely irrelevant in an irrelevant sport.
I remember Manny Pacquiao. I don't know if this was the rumor, but that he
Boston
was,
Celtics.
yes, he's watching the Celtics. He'd go to overtime, so they had to hold the curtain on for him to go out because he wanted to watch that game. I agree. I definitely think you have to run your main event when it's the time. You can't let your fans in the arena just wait because you're waiting on a UFC fight. That seems utterly ridiculous. And obviously, Canelo. I mean, this isn't like a regional show, for goodness sake. It's a big deal. Um, as far as people going to the fight, you think that this can be a sellout at the MGM Grand, or I don't know if the numbers have already come out, if it's already sold out, but how do you think tickets will be as far as people coming to watch? I mean, I assume a lot of Canelo fans.
I think it's gonna be good, man, because people are really, really trying to travel right now coming off of COVID-19. The pandemic is still in full effect. You definitely need to consult scientists about if you feel nervous about things. I want to emphasize that because we, you know, believe in science. Science is good. That's my rant. But people are hungry for these big fights. They want to go to these things. When you look at Wilder Fury, it's a big crowd. When you see Canelo walk out, and then what people are underestimating about the selling power of this fight, Caleb Plant is now a Vegas fighter. He lives in Vegas.
He lives in
There's a
Vegas.
lot of people who may be boxing fans, they might be boxers. They're going to go to see Caleb because he's the local guy. So Caleb, in terms of ticket sales live, Caleb's going to be a force because people want to be there to support their guy and they don't have to fly in. They just drive whatever car they have, they park it in a parking lot or they Uber and they go. And I think that this is going to surprise people how good the gate is because people want to see Canelo. Caleb's from the hometown. It's a compelling fight. And then they also have kind of sneaky guys who pull in numbers. We got, like I said, Marcos Hernandez always pulls in good gate numbers. Anthony Durrell,
Anthony
been
Durrell.
built up. You know, Ray Vargas, he has a fan base also from Mexico, was brought up on Golden Boy cards. Elvis Rodriguez just recently left Top Rank. Abe Gonzalez in New York Fights did a great article on him. People are very interested in him. So I think that there's enough interest amongst different groups of people that it'll fill up quite nicely.
Well, Uncle Lukie Ketelle from Inside the Ropes Boxing. Give us your Twitter handle if you can. I will put it across the bottom there, but go ahead.
Okay, well, I'll give the Twitter's not that big, but I definitely wanted to say before I do that, shout out to the Feet First Foundation, nonprofit,
Yep.
helping young people out there through the art of boxing. What we're doing is if you're feeling insecure, sad, depressed, getting into problems with the law, this foundation is built around in Northern California, but it's not trying, it's going to go national. And it's based around making people feel better because as a young person, there's a lot of difficult things coming at you real quick. And basically, the program is just to make sure young people are the best versions of themselves, feeling positive, and a John Dewey approach to society, making sure that they feel good. Also, if you want to look sexy like me, shout out to Snack System, ZMA, Nightcap, shout out to Victor Conti. You don't know how many times I go places and like people are touching on my body, and that's partially because I take products like Proglycin, Snack Expedite, all different types of stuff. Women grabbing my body, you know, people saying, "Oh man, you're lifting weights, you look good." So take all that stuff, Casey 10, that's the code, and you can follow me at Lukie Boxing on Twitter, and that's it.
You hit the lead there. People are always touching your body. What's going on?
Yeah, I mean, just when I'm out, bro, like I lift weights, right? So when you lift weights, sometimes you're out and about, and you know, someone might just want to feel what's going on there. We call them pythons, and
Wow.
sometimes you got some big shoulders and stuff, and every now and then you might be somewhere and someone bumps into you and touching on you and stuff. And I think that if you want that type of experience, like maybe you're not feeling confident, like we're talking about, go see the Feet First Foundation from 13 to 18. Then if you want to get into like look a little bit better, maybe you're already looking good, but you want to get, maybe take your shirt off, look like Uncle Lukie, maybe start working with Snack, Victor Conti's program. ZMA nightcap, great program. Before you take the supplements, proglycin, expedite, it gets you looking real right, you know. So then you get to go to Kings games, great seats, you know, be around beautiful people. We're just out here having fun. So that kind of sums it up.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's good. I'm sorry I missed you at the Kings game. Sucks. The only time I was in Sacramento, but definitely maybe next time.
We'll play
Uncle
golf.
Lukie.
We'll play golf. I'll come up because I want to play Chambers Bay. I want to play Gamble
Yeah,
Sands. So I'm gonna
David
play golf.
Benavidez trains up here, so you know you could swing by and check him out. Then we'll play 18. It's I would say wait till the spring because it's really cold now.
But see, I like now we're gonna go a different place. But see, I like playing golf in bad weather.
Really?
Like I
Wow.
actually like bad weather golf more than good weather golf. I like having like the beanie on and like braving the element because you gotta remember I'm a Viking. So
Sure.
like it almost feels very like ancestral, it taps into something deep in my core where I'm like going on a pillage, a quest, like I'm braving it in the wild. So it's like when it's bad weather golf, it's like I always feel like I'm like enjoying it more. And then everyone else is upset. Like I don't really like a beautiful day golf as much as most people.
Uh, we'll still see. We'll still go. We'll still play 18 at Chambers Bay. I mean I will bundle up and do it. But yeah.
I'll play with you on the sunny day and then I'll go
It's
bare
sunny and 40
elements.
degrees. It'll be sunny and 40 degrees here in Seattle. Actually, that's what it is right now. But yeah, Lukie, it's always a pleasure to talk to you. I'll be watching both UFC and boxing on Saturday night. November 6th is gonna be a big day for everything. But again, thank you for Lukie Ketelle and the interview on MMA Payout. We'll see you later.